The dungeons were where you went to be forgotten. Rhiannon had learned this truth over the course of 49 days. 49 sunrises she had not seen. 49 nights that bled into one endless, suffocating darkness. The stone beneath her cheek had grown familiar, in the way that pain becomes familiar when there is nothing else to hold on to. Cold, unyielding, permanent. She no longer counted the hours. Time meant nothing when you were hollow. The chains around her wrists had stopped hurting weeks ago. The body adapts even to its own destruction. But the emptiness inside her chest, the vast and terrible void where her wolf had once lived, that pain never faded. It pulsed with every shallow breath. It screamed with every heartbeat that grew weaker, slower, more uncertain. They had taken everything from her. Her wolf, her voice, her name. She was nothing now, just a shell waiting for the mercy of death. But death, it seemed, was in no hurry. 6 months earlier, the moon had been red. Rhiannon remembered this detail with crystalline clarity, the way trauma brands certain moments into the mind forever. The color of blood spreading across the skin, the smell of sage and sulfur, the cold bite of autumn air that promised winter's approach. She had not known when they dragged her from her chambers that she would never see another autumn. The ritual chamber was deep beneath the fortress hewn from stone, so old it predated memory. Torches lined the walls, their flames casting shadows that seemed to writhe and pulse with malevolent life. 3 witches stood in a triangle formation, their faces hidden beneath heavy hoods, their hands moving in patterns that left trails of silver light hanging in the air. In the center of the circle, 2 stone slabs waited. Lord Dorian stood between them, Rhiannon's uncle, the man who had raised her after her mother's death, who had taught her to ride, who had wiped her tears when she skinned her knees as a child. His face now was granite, no warmth, no recognition, only a terrible, desperate resolve. "Forgive me," he said, and his voice cracked on the words. "She's dying. I had no choice." Rhiannon tried to speak, to plead, to understand, but the gag in her mouth turned her words to muffled nothing. On the second slab lay Celestine, Dorian's daughter, Rhiannon's cousin. 22 years old and pale as death itself, her skin stretched tight over bones that seemed too sharp, too fragile. Her eyes were closed. Her chest barely moved with breath. The sickness had been eating her alive for months. No healer could cure it. No medicine could slow it. Celestine was fading and everyone knew it. But Rhiannon had not understood the cost of saving her. Not until Dorian approached with the black iron blade. The metal gleamed in the torchlight, etched with symbols that hurt to look at. Old magic. Forbidden magic. The kind that required payment in blood and soul. "Hold her," Dorian commanded. Hands gripped Rhiannon's arms, forced her down onto the cold stone. She thrashed, screamed against the gag, but the witches were strong, their magic stronger. Silver cords wrapped around her wrists and ankles, binding her completely. The chanting began. Words in a language older than the kingdoms, older than the wolves themselves. The air grew thick, heavy, pressing down on Rhiannon's chest until she could barely breathe. The torches flared brighter, their flames turning from orange to blue to a sickly green. Dorian stood over her, the blade raised. "The light must pass," one of the witches intoned, "from blood to blood, from heart to heart. What was given freely, now taken by force." "No," Rhiannon tried to scream. "No, please." The blade came down. Not into her flesh, but above it, cutting through something invisible, something essential. Rhiannon felt a severing like a physical wound, a tearing so profound it shattered every part of her. The wolf inside her, the golden creature of light and warmth that had been her constant companion since childhood, began to scream. Golden light erupted from Rhiannon's chest. It poured out in waves, liquid and luminous, brighter than the sun. The witches caught it in their hands, shaping it, forcing it into a glass vial that pulsed with contained power. Rhiannon's wolf thrashed inside the prison of light, howling, desperate to return to the only home she had ever known. But the ritual was relentless. The witches carried the vial to Celestine. Dorian pressed the blade against his daughter's sternum, cutting just deep enough to draw blood. The moment the wound opened, the golden light surged forward, eager, hungry, seeking a new host. Celestine's eyes flew open. She gasped, her back arching off the stone as the wolf poured into her. The light sank beneath her skin, disappearing into muscle and bone and blood. Her eyes, which had been dark brown all her life, began to glow with amber fire. The wolf that did not belong to her. The wolf that was being stolen, transferred, ripped away from its true mate. Rhiannon felt the final connection snap. The tether that bound wolf to human, that made them whole, that made them real, severed completely. The emptiness rushed in to fill the space, cold and vast and terrible beyond description. Rhiannon heard herself screaming, a raw animal sound that echoed off the stone walls. And then she heard nothing at all. The void swallowed her whole. When she woke, she was in the dungeons. Lord Dorian stood outside the bars of her cell, backlit by torchlight. His face was haggard, aged a decade in a single night. But Celestine stood beside him. Her color returned, her eyes bright with new strength. Bright with amber that should have been brown. Marcus is dead, Dorian said, his voice flat. Burned in a fire 2 nights ago. You were seen fleeing the scene. The council has found you guilty of murder. Rhiannon stared at him, unable to comprehend the words. Marcus, kind, gentle Marcus, who had helped her practice combat forms, who had made her laugh when grief felt too heavy. Dead. I didn't. Her voice came out, broken raw from screaming. I would never. The wolf transfer was justice, Dorian continued, speaking over her protests. You are hollow now, a shell, and you will remain here until your body finally gives up. He turned to leave. Celestine followed, not meeting Rhiannon's eyes. Just before they disappeared into the darkness, Dorian looked back. His expression was unreadable, but his words were quiet, urgent. Get far from here, Rhiannon. If anyone ever gives you a chance to leave, take it. Quickly. Then they were gone. And Rhiannon was left alone in the dark with nothing but the terrible emptiness where her soul used to be. Day 49 began like all the others. The guard brought water, once a single cup that barely wet her throat. He said nothing, looked at her like she was already dead. Perhaps she was. Without her wolf, Rhiannon's body was failing. Wolves needed their beasts to heal, to regulate temperature, to process food and water. Hollowed wolves did not survive. The longest recorded case had lasted 3 months. Rhiannon had been hollow for nearly 6. She should be dead. Part of her wished she was. The fever came and went in waves. The wound on her chest where the ritual had cut into her very essence had festered. Infection spread through her blood, slow and relentless. Her body was eating itself, trying to sustain something that could not be sustained. She lay curled on her side, conserving what little warmth remained. Her dark hair, once thick and healthy, hung in matted tangles. Her skin was gray, stretched thin over bones that jutted sharp beneath. She was 24 years old and she looked ancient. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made her stir barely. Another guard, perhaps. Another day survived that she did not want to survive. But these footsteps were different. Heavy. Purposeful. They did not shuffle or hesitate. They descended with absolute confidence, each step echoing through the dungeon like a drumbeat. And with the footsteps came something else. Power. It rolled down the stairs like a living thing, pressing against Rhiannon's skin, filling the small cell until she could barely breathe. This was not the dominance of an ordinary alpha. This was something older, something bred from bloodlines so pure they bordered on myth. Against her will, Rhiannon opened her eyes. A figure stood outside her cell, backlit by torchlight. Tall, impossibly tall. His silhouette was sharp, angular shadows and winter-made flesh. Dark hair fell past his shoulders in waves that seemed to absorb the flickering light. His face was all harsh planes and brutal edges, a jawline like a blade, cheekbones that spoke of cruelty or strength or both. But his eyes, pale silver frost on glass, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her damaged heart stutter. Who put her here? His voice was quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. Behind him, a nervous guard stammered, Your Majesty, she is no one. A hollow. Her own alpha condemned her for murder. She is not worthy of your attention. The man the King Rhiannon realized with distant shock did not look away from her. His nostrils flared slightly. His hands, which hung loose at his sides, clenched into fists. Open this cell, he commanded. Your Majesty, I cannot. Lord Dorian has forbidden. The king's head turned just slightly. The guard fell silent mid-sentence, color draining from his face. I am Theron of Valdoria, the king said, each word precise, controlled, deadly. I am the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. I do not recognize Lord Dorian's authority over anything. Open this cell, now. The guard's hands shook as he fumbled with the keys. Rhiannon watched through fever-blurred vision as the bars swung open. She watched as the Alpha King stepped inside his massive frame, filling the tiny space. She watched as he crouched before her, bringing his face level with hers. Up close, he was terrifying. Cold radiated from him like he carried winter in his bones. His presence was suffocating, overwhelming, and yet his hand, when it touched her cheek, was impossibly gentle. What did they do to you? He murmured. Rhiannon tried to speak, but her voice had withered from weeks of disuse. She could only stare at him, at this impossible king who had descended into the darkness to find her. His thumb traced the edge of her jaw. His silver gaze roamed her face, cataloging every bruise, every hollow, every sign of her slow death. And then it dropped to her chest, to the bandaged wound that marked where her wolf had been torn away. His entire body went rigid. The temperature in the cell plummeted. Rhiannon's breath fogged in the air. "They took your wolf," he said, voice ice and fury combined. "They severed your bond." Rhiannon managed the smallest nod. For a long moment, the Alpha King did not move. He simply stared at the evidence of what had been done to her, and the air itself seemed to freeze around them. Then he looked up, and she saw something in his expression that she did not understand. Recognition, possessiveness, rage. "Mine," he breathed. Before Rhiannon could process the word, he had gathered her into his arms. She was too weak to resist, too confused to understand. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest despite the filth and blood that covered her. "Your Majesty!" The guard had gone pale. "You cannot simply take her. She belongs to Lord Dorian." "The treaty negotiations." "The negotiations are over," Theron's voice echoed through the dungeon, cold and final. "Tell Dorian that I am taking what is mine. Tell him that if he wishes to challenge me for her, I will be waiting." He carried her up the stairs through corridors that grew warmer and brighter with each step. Servants gasped and scattered. Warriors stopped and stared, but no one dared block the path of the Alpha King. When they emerged into the great hall, Lord Dorian was already waiting. He stood near the massive fireplace, surrounded by his council. His expression was barely contained fury. Beside him stood Celestine, her golden hair shining in the firelight, her eyes bright with amber that did not belong to her. Brown eyes that now held the glow of a stolen wolf. Rhiannon saw her cousin wearing her soul like a crown, and something inside her shattered it all over again. "Theron," Dorian's voice was carefully controlled. "I see you found my prisoner. I apologize that you had to witness our internal matters. If you return her to me, we can continue discussing the trade agreements." The Alpha King stopped in the center of the hall. Every eye was on him, on the dying, hollow woman in his arms. "This woman," Theron said, his voice carrying to every corner, "is my mate." The silence that followed was absolute. Rhiannon felt the words hit her like a physical blow. Mate. That was impossible. She had no wolf. She could not bond. The mate recognition required two wolves to acknowledge each other, and she was empty. She was nothing. "You are mistaken, Dorian said through gritted teeth. "She has no wolf. She cannot bond. Whatever you think you sensed, I know what I sensed." Theron's arms tightened around her. "And I know what you stole from her. I can see it in your daughter's eyes right now." Celestine flinched, her hand flying to her chest. "That wolf belongs to this woman," Theron continued, "which means your daughter is carrying stolen property, which means your entire pack has committed a crime against my mate." He smiled, and it was the coldest expression Rhiannon had ever seen. "The treaty negotiations are indeed over, Dorian, but not in the way you hoped." He turned to face the assembled crowd, holding Rhiannon up for all to see. "I, Theron of Valdoria Alpha, King of the Northern Territories, claim this woman as mine. My mate, my wife, my queen." His voice rang through the hall like a war drum. "Anyone who challenges this claim challenges me. Anyone who harms her answers to the crown." And then, before Dorian could respond, before anyone could move or speak or breathe, the Alpha King walked out of the fortress with his dying mate in his arms. Rhiannon woke to softness. For a long moment, she simply lay there, too afraid to move, too afraid to discover this was another fever dream. The mattress beneath her was thick and plush, nothing like the stone floor she had grown accustomed to. The sheets were silk against her skin. The air smelled of lavender and cedar instead of rot and despair. Slowly, carefully, she opened her eyes. The room was enormous. Vaulted ceilings arched overhead, painted with scenes of wolves running beneath a silver moon. Tall windows lined one wall, their curtains drawn back to reveal a gray sky heavy with the promise of snow. A fire crackled in a hearth large enough to stand in, filling the space with warmth. She was clean, she realized. Someone had bathed her, dressed her in a soft nightgown, tended to the wound on her chest. The festering infection had been treated. While her body still felt hollow and wrong, the immediate danger had passed. But how? The last thing she remembered was the Alpha King carrying her, his arms around her, his voice declaring her as his mate. That had to have been a dream, a dying woman's fantasy. Except here she was in a room that could only belong to royalty, wearing clothes finer than anything she had owned, even before her fall. The door opened. Rhiannon tensed her body, instinctively curling into itself despite the pain. But it was not a guard or a servant who entered. It was him. The Alpha King looked different in daylight. Less like a vengeful god, and more like a man, though no less dangerous for it. He had changed from his traveling clothes into a simple black shirt and dark trousers, but the power radiating from him was unchanged. His silver eyes swept over her, assessing, cataloging every intel. "You're awake," he said. Rhiannon nodded, still unable to find her voice. He crossed the room and sat in a chair near the fire, close enough to speak comfortably, but far enough to not crowd her. She noticed he moved carefully, deliberately, as if he understood that a trapped animal would bite if cornered. "The healers say you will live," he said. "The infection is clearing. Your body is starting to stabilize." Rhiannon lifted a hand to her chest, pressing against the bandages there. The emptiness inside her yawned like a wound that would never heal. "But your wolf," Theron's jaw tightened. "They could not restore that. The bond was severed completely. The wolf is no longer yours." She had known this, had felt the absence every moment since the ritual. But hearing it confirmed, spoken aloud in this cold, clinical way, made the loss feel fresh again. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough in that dungeon. She would not cry now. "Why did you take me?" The words came out as a whisper, rough from disuse. Theron was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled, as if he were selecting each word with precision. "Because you are my mate. I felt the bond the moment I descended those stairs. My wolf recognized you instantly." "I have no wolf," Rhiannon said. "The bond cannot form without—" "I know what I felt." He cut her off, but not unkindly. "My wolf saw you, and he claimed you. I do not understand it either. I do not know how a bond can begin with someone who has been hollowed. But it did." He met her gaze, and she saw the conflict there, confusion and certainty warring for dominance. "I never intended to take a mate," Theron said, leaning forward slightly. "I have avoided it my entire life. There are reasons, complications you do not yet understand." His jaw tightened. "But fate, it seems, has decided otherwise." "What do you want from me?" Rhiannon asked. "I want to offer you a choice." He held up one hand, forestalling her response. "I can arrange safe passage for you to any territory outside the Northern Kingdoms. I can give you gold resources, a new identity. You could disappear. Start over. Live out your life in peace, away from Dorian, away from me, away from everything that has hurt you." The offer hung in the air, generous, unexpected. "Or," Rhiannon whispered, Theron's eyes locked onto hers, "or you stay. You become my wife, my queen. I will protect you. I will give you access to every resource in my kingdom to find a way to restore your wolf or heal what was broken. You will want for nothing." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "What is the price?" Rhiannon asked. Something like respect flickered across his features. "You are cleverer than you look." "I have learned the hard way that nothing is free." Theron took a breath. "The price is this: I will marry you. I will honor you publicly. I will give you my name and my protection. But I will never love you. I cannot love you, and I need you to accept that." The words should have hurt, but after everything Rhiannon had endured, they felt almost refreshing in their honesty. "Why?" she asked. For the first time, the Alpha King looked away. He stared into the fire, and the flames reflected in his eyes like tiny orange suns. "There is a curse on my bloodline," he said quietly. "Every king of Valdoria who has completed a mate bond has died within the year. My father, his father, every generation back to the beginning. The bond itself is poison to us." He looked back at her, and she saw the weight of centuries in his gaze. "If I love you, if I allow the bond to fully form, I will die, and you will be left a widow before you have even begun to heal." Rhiannon stared at him. A curse, a death sentence, and he had claimed her anyway. "Why not just leave me in that dungeon?" she asked. "Why risk everything for a woman you can never truly have?" Theron's expression shifted. Something vulnerable flashed beneath the ice before he locked it away. "Because my wolf would not let me," he said simply. "Because when I saw you lying there broken and abandoned, something in me roared that I had to save you, even if saving you destroys me." He stood, turning toward the door. "You do not have to decide now," he said, without turning around. "Take time to heal. Consider your options. But know this, Rhiannon." He spoke her name for the first time, and it sent an inexplicable shiver down her spine. "Whatever you decide, I will honor it. You have been stripped of your choices for too long. I will not be another person who takes them from you." Then he was gone, and Rhiannon was left alone with the impossible weight of everything he had offered. Safety, protection, a crown, but never love. She thought of Dorian's cruelty, of her mother's turn back, of Celestine wearing her wolf like a stolen crown. She thought of the dungeon, the darkness, the slow surrender to death. And she thought of the Alpha King, cold and cursed and somehow still gentle, offering her everything except the one thing that mattered most. Cold over cruelty, she thought. Perhaps that was the best she could hope for. 3 days passed in a haze of healing. Rhiannon ate meals richer than anything she had tasted in years. She was tended by servants whose hands were careful and whose eyes held no contempt. She slept in silk sheets and woke to sunlight streaming through tall windows. It should have felt like paradise. Instead, it felt like waiting. On the fourth day, an elderly woman entered her chambers. She was small and weathered with silver hair, braided down her back, and hands that bore the calluses of someone who had worked their entire life. Her dark eyes, knowing and sharp, studied Rhiannon with an intensity that made her want to fidget. "I am Elsbeth," the woman said, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. "The king's household keeper. I have served 3 generations of Valdorian kings." She moved closer, her gaze assessing. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" Rhiannon asked. "Someone harder." Elsbeth circled her slowly like a hawk evaluating prey. "Someone who had survived what you have would usually have walls higher than the castle itself, but you—" She paused in front of Rhiannon, meeting her eyes. "You still have softness in you. Guard that carefully, child. Not everyone in this court will appreciate it." Before Rhiannon could respond, the door opened again. A guard announced that the king was ready for her. The walk to the great hall felt endless. Servants lined the corridors, bowing as she passed. Nobles gathered in clusters, their whispers following her like shadows. Hollow, wolfless. How can she be queen? Rhiannon forced herself to keep walking, to keep her chin high and her expression neutral, even as anxiety pounded through her veins. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her fear. The great hall of Valdoria was nothing like Dorian's fortress. Where his had been dark and oppressive, this space soared with light. Massive windows lined the walls, their glass etched with ancient symbols. Tapestries depicted the history of the kingdom, wolves and kings and battles won. And at the far end, on a raised dais, stood Theron. He wore black as he always seemed to, but today his clothing bore silver embroidery that caught the light. His dark hair was pulled back from his face, emphasizing the sharp angles of his features and the coldness of his eyes. Those eyes found her the moment she entered. Rhiannon felt the weight of his gaze like a physical touch as she walked down the center aisle. The assembled nobles parted before her, their faces a mix of curiosity, contempt, and calculation. She kept her eyes forward, kept breathing. At the base of the dais, she stopped and curtsied, the movement careful despite her still healing body. "Rise," Theron said, extending his hand. She took it. His skin was cold, always cold, like touching winter itself. He guided her up the steps to stand beside him, and together they turned to face the crowd. A man in ceremonial robes stepped forward, the kingdom's official witness. He carried a scroll that had to be the marriage contract. "We are gathered to witness the formal bonding of Theron of Valdoria, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, and Rhiannon of—" The man hesitated, clearly uncertain how to identify her. "Simply Rhiannon," Theron said smoothly. "She has renounced her former pack." A murmur rippled through the crowd. To renounce one's pack was a significant act, usually reserved for those who had been deeply wronged. The ceremony continued. The witness read the terms of the contract. Protection, provision, heirs, all the expected components. But one clause in particular made Rhiannon's pulse quicken. "The queen shall receive full authority to pursue the restoration of her stolen birthright." The witness read, "with all resources of the crown at her disposal." Rhiannon looked at Theron sharply. He had not mentioned this. His expression remained neutral, but she caught the slightest softening around his eyes. A gift, she realized. He was giving her official backing to try to reclaim her wolf. "Is this agreeable?" the witness asked. "Yes," Rhiannon said, her voice stronger than she expected. "It is agreeable." Theron's hand tightened briefly around hers, a gesture so small that no one else would have noticed. The signing itself was simple. A quill, a piece of parchment, 2 names written in ink that seemed to glow faintly before settling into the paper. Magic, Rhiannon realized. The contract was binding in more than just the legal sense. "By the authority vested in me," the witness declared, "I pronounce this bond witnessed and true. All hail the Queen of Valdoria." "All hail the Queen!" the crowd echoed, though Rhiannon heard reluctance in more than a few voices. It was done. She was married to the Alpha King. Before the weight of that reality could fully settle, a commotion erupted near the entrance. The crowd parted, and Rhiannon felt her stomach drop as she recognized the figure striding toward the dais. Dorian walked with the arrogance of someone who believed himself untouchable. His silver-streaked hair was slicked back from his cruel face, and his dark eyes gleamed with calculation. Behind him came two guards and Celestine. Her cousin looked different. The stolen wolf had changed her, given her a presence she had never possessed before. Her eyes glowed with amber light, and she moved with a predator's grace. Grace that did not belong to her. Because it was stolen, Rhiannon thought bitterly. Because that grace is mine. Lord Dorian, Theron said, his voice dangerously soft, I do not recall inviting you to this ceremony. Tradition demands that the original pack witness any bonding that results from a claim made in their territory, Dorian replied smoothly. Surely the great Alpha King would not violate tradition. The tension in the hall was suffocating. Your presence here is unnecessary, Theron said. The claim was witnessed by your own people. Perhaps, Dorian smiled, and it was the smile of a predator circling wounded prey. But I wanted to personally congratulate my former ward on her unexpected fortune. His gaze slid to Rhiannon, and she forced herself not to flinch. Tell me, Your Majesty, Dorian continued. Did she mention why she was in that dungeon? Did she tell you what she did to Marcus? The whispers started immediately. Rhiannon felt the blood drain from her face. Of course he would do this. Of course he would not let her escape cleanly. Enlighten me, Theron said, and there was warning in his tone. Dorian's smile widened. Your new queen murdered her own packmate. Poor Marcus burned alive in a fire of her making. She was condemned by our council. Her wolf was stripped as punishment for her crime. The whispers became roars. That's not true, Rhiannon said, but her voice was drowned out by the chaos. I have witnesses, Dorian continued, raising his voice to be heard. I have testimony. Your queen is a killer Alpha King, a murderer who escaped justice only because you happened to stumble into my dungeons. Theron's power rolled through the hall like a tsunami. Suddenly everyone fell silent. The dominance radiating from him was crushing, absolute, the kind of authority that demanded instant obedience. You come into my hall, he said quietly, on the day of my bonding, and you accuse my mate of murder. I simply speak the truth, Dorian said, though even he seemed unsettled by the king's power. Then speak all of it. Theron descended one step, then another, until he stood face to face with the older Alpha. Tell them about the trial. Tell them about the evidence. Tell them about the defense she was allowed to mount. Dorian's jaw tightened. There was no trial, Theron said loud enough for the entire hall to hear. My investigators confirmed it. You accused her, condemned her, and stole her to Wolf without ever allowing her to speak, without ever presenting evidence to an impartial body, without ever following the laws that govern our kind. The murmurs changed in tone. Whatever crime you claim she committed, Theron continued, you had no right to punish her without due process. You had no right to take her wolf. And you certainly have no right to come into my kingdom and question my choice of mate. Dorian's composure cracked just slightly. She is hollow, he said. She is wolfless. She cannot bear you proper heirs. You are weakening your bloodline for nothing. My bloodline is none of your concern. Theron's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried further than a shout. And if you speak another word against my wife, I will take it as a declaration of war. He stepped closer, towering over Dorian. Is that what you want? The threat hung in the air like a blade. Dorian took a step back. His guards shifted nervously. This is not over, Dorian said. For your sake. Theron replied, it better be. The former Alpha retreated, his guards and Celestine following. But as they passed Rhiannon, her cousin leaned close enough that only she could hear. He will find out eventually, Celestine whispered, about what you really are, about what they say you did to Marcus. And when he does, all this protection will mean nothing. Then she was gone, and Rhiannon was left standing on the dais, married to a king, surrounded by strangers, with her cousin's warning echoing in her ears. She felt Theron's hand on her elbow, steadying her. Breathe, he murmured, so quiet only she could hear. You did well. But Rhiannon could not focus on the praise. She could only think about Celestine's words, about Dorian's accusations, about the truth she had never been allowed to tell, because she had not murdered Marcus. But she knew who had, and that secret, if it ever came to light, would destroy far more than just her marriage to the Alpha King. The days following the ceremony blurred together. Rhiannon had expected hostility from the court. She had expected contempt, skepticism, perhaps even outright cruelty. What she had not expected was the suffocating weight of constant observation. Every step she took was noted. Every word she spoke was analyzed. Every meal she ate, every corridor she walked, every moment she spent in the gardens, all of it was fodder for gossip. The Hollow Queen they called her when they thought she could not hear. The Wolfless Bride. A shell pretending to be royalty. Rhiannon endured it in silence. She had survived worse. A few sharp tongues could not break someone who had already been shattered and pieced back together in a dungeon's darkness. But the emptiness inside her was growing harder to ignore. Without her wolf, her body struggled to maintain itself. Normal shifters healed quickly, regulated their temperature effortlessly, drew strength from the beast that lived within them. Rhiannon had none of that. She tired easily. She caught chills that lingered for days. And sometimes when she pushed herself too hard, the void in her chest seemed to pulse with a pain that brought her to her knees. It happened on the 7th day after the ceremony. She had been walking in the east wing, exploring the castle's endless corridors, when the pain struck without warning. One moment she was admiring a tapestry depicting an ancient battle. The next she was doubled over, gasping, her hand pressed against the wall for support. The void inside her was not just empty anymore. It was hungry. She could feel it pulling at her, draining what little energy she had, demanding something she could not give. Her vision blurred. Her knees buckled. And as the stone floor rushed up to meet her, she thought distantly that this was an undignified way for a queen to die. But she never hit the ground. Arms caught her, strong arms, cold arms, and suddenly she was pressed against a chest that radiated winter. Rhiannon. Theron's voice was sharp with something that sounded almost like fear. Rhiannon, can you hear me? She tried to respond, but her tongue felt thick and useless. All she could do was lean into him, letting his cold seep into her fevered skin. He did not wait for an answer. He lifted her easily, cradling her against him, the same way he had in Dorian's dungeon, and began walking with long, urgent strides. Someone fetch the healers, he commanded. Now. Rhiannon drifted in and out of awareness. She caught glimpses of concerned faces, heard fragments of hurried conversations, felt herself being laid down on something soft. Hands touched her, examining, prodding. Voices murmured words like deteriorating and unsustainable, and without her wolf, she simply cannot. Then Theron's voice cut through the case, cold and commanding. Leave us. Footsteps retreated. A door closed. And suddenly there was silence. Rhiannon forced her eyes open. Theron sat in a chair beside her bed, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. His silver eyes were fixed on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. The healers say your body is failing, he said quietly. Without a wolf to sustain you, you are essentially fading, like a candle running out of wax. Rhiannon closed her eyes. She had known this on some level, had felt the truth of it every time she woke more tired than when she had gone to sleep. How long? She asked. Months, perhaps a year if we are careful. His jaw tightened. But there may be another option. She looked at him. A partial bond, he said. Not a full mating bond that would trigger the curse. But there are older rituals, blood bonds that can share strength between two wolves without completing the mate connection. He paused. If I gave you access to my wolf's energy, it might stabilize you, keep you alive long enough to find a real solution. Rhiannon stared at him. You would do that, share your wolf with me. You are my wife. The words were matter of fact, but something flickered beneath them. Your death would be inconvenient. Despite everything, Rhiannon felt her lips twitch toward a smile. Inconvenient. Theron's expression did not change, but she could have sworn she saw a hint of warmth in his gaze. Extremely. The ritual was performed that night. Elsbeth oversaw it, her weathered hands steady as she guided them through the ancient words. Rhiannon and Theron sat facing each other in the center of Rhiannon's chambers, their palms pressed together as the old woman drew symbols on their skin with ink that smelled of ash and moonlight. This bond will sustain her, Elsbeth said as she worked, but it will also connect you in ways you may not expect. You will feel each other's presence, sense each other's emotions to some degree. The link will be permanent. I understand, Theron said. When the final symbol was drawn, Elsbeth stepped back. Speak the words, she instructed, both of you together. Rhiannon and Theron locked eyes. By blood and breath, they said in unison, their voices blending. By bone and marrow, by the moon that watches and the earth that holds. I bind my strength to yours. I offer what I have. I accept what is given. From this moment until the last. Power surged through their joined hands. Rhiannon gasped as Theron's wolf reached out to her across the bond. Not claiming, not possessing, simply offering. Energy flowed into the void inside her, not filling it, but surrounding it, holding it stable like a dam, holding back a flood. The hunger receded, the pain eased. For the first time in weeks, Rhiannon took a breath that did not hurt. It worked, she whispered. Theron's hands were still pressed against hers. His skin was cold as always, but now she could feel something else beneath it. A pulse of power, a connection that hummed between them like a plucked string. It worked, he agreed. His voice was rough. They stayed like that for a long-rested moment. Hands joined, breathing synchronized. The bond between them thrumming with shared energy. It was the most intimate Rhiannon had ever felt with another person, and they had barely touched. Finally, Theron pulled back. He stood abruptly as if distance might break the spell. You should rest, he said. The bond will need time to stabilize. Theron, he paused at the door, not turning. Thank you, Rhiannon said softly. You did not have to do this. You could have let me fade. Found another mate, one who was not broken. For a long moment, he did not respond. Then so quietly, she almost missed it. You are not broken, Rhiannon. You are surviving. There is a difference, Avisto. The door closed behind him, and Rhiannon was left alone with the warmth of his words and the strange tentative hope blooming in her chest. But that night, as she drifted towards sleep with the bond humming beneath her skin, she felt something else. A flicker in the void. Small, distant, like an ember struggling to catch. It was there and gone in an instant, so quick she might have imagined it. But Rhiannon did not think she had imagined it. Something was stirring inside her, something that felt like light. The next morning, Rhiannon woke with more energy than she had felt in months. The blood bond was working. She could sense Theron now, a constant awareness at the edge of her consciousness. Not his thoughts or emotions exactly, but his presence. Like knowing where the sun was, even with her eyes closed. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like safety. She spent the day exploring the castle more thoroughly, her steps steadier, her body stronger. Servants bowed as she passed. Nobles watched with wary eyes. But Rhiannon held her head high. She was the queen now. Hollow or not, she would act like it. That evening, she found herself in the library, a vast room lined floor to ceiling with books, scrolls, and ancient texts. A fire crackled in the hearth. Snow fell softly outside the windows. Rhiannon ran her fingers along the spines of leather-bound volumes, marveling at the collection. And then one title caught her eye. The Luminary, A History of Light Wolves. Her pulse quickened. She pulled the book from the shelf and carried it to a chair by the fire. The pages were yellowed with age, the text written in elegant script. The Luminary were the first of our kind, the introduction read. Wolves of pure light descended from the sun itself. They possessed the ability to heal, to illuminate truth, to drive away darkness. But their power came at a cost. Light that burns too bright consumes its vessel. Most Luminary died young, their bodies unable to contain the magic they carried. Rhiannon's hands trembled as she turned the page. There, illuminated in gold leaf, was a family tree. And at the bottom, written in fresh ink that could not be more than a few days old, was a single name. Rhiannon, daughter of Marin, granddaughter of Elsbeth, last of the Luminary line. The book slipped from her fingers. Elsbeth, the elderly keeper who had performed the blood bond, her grandmother. A sound at the doorway made Rhiannon look up. Elsbeth stood there, her dark eyes knowing and sad. You found it, the old woman said. You are my grandmother, Rhiannon whispered. My mother's mother. Yes. And my mother was a light wolf, a Luminary. Yes, Rhiannon stood on shaking legs. Why did you not tell me? Why did Dorian not tell me? Why did no one? Because your mother died giving birth to you, Elsbeth said gently. Her light was too strong. It burned her from the inside. And your uncle fooled that he has believed that if no one spoke of it, if no one acknowledged what you were, perhaps you would be spared her fate. She moved closer. But you cannot suppress light forever, child. It will always find a way to shine. Rhiannon pressed a hand to her chest, to the void where her wolf should be. If I am Luminary, she said slowly, if I carry light wolf magic, then that is what Dorian stole. That is what he gave to Celestine. Yes. And that is why the transfer failed. Why Celestine is being consumed. Because stolen light cannot survive in darkness. Elsbeth nodded. Rhiannon's mind raced. If she was Luminary, if her wolf carried light magic, then perhaps the flicker she had felt was not imagination. Perhaps some part of her light remained buried deep, waiting to be called home. Can I get it back? She asked. Can I reclaim my wolf? I do not know, Elsbeth said honestly, but I know someone who might. She held out a sealed letter. This arrived today, by secret courier, from your cousin. Rhiannon took the letter with trembling hands. She broke the seal and read the contents written in Celestine's careful script. Rhiannon father lied. About everything. Mother is not dead, she is trapped in the East Tower, cursed 5 years ago by a rival pack. Father stole your wolf to use its light to break her curse. But the magic is corrupted because it was taken by force. Now it is killing me. I can feel it eating me from the inside, trying to return to you. If you do not come soon, I will be dead, and so will Mother. And your wolf will be lost, forever trapped in a corpse. Please, I know I do not deserve your mercy, but I am begging anyway. Come home before it is too late. Celestine Rhiannon read the letter 3 times. Then she looked at her grandmother. I have to go back, she said. I have to face Dorian. I have to save Celestine and reclaim my wolf. The journey will be dangerous, Elsbeth warned. You are only beginning to heal, and you are... She stopped. Rhiannon frowned. I am what? Elsbeth's gaze dropped to Rhiannon's stomach. With child, the old woman said softly. The blood bond has stabilized you enough that the pregnancy can take hold. You are perhaps 3 weeks along, maybe 4. The world tilted. Pregnant, she was carrying Theron's child, the child of a cursed king and a hollow queen, the child who might be the key to everything, or the cost of it all. Rhiannon pressed a hand to her stomach where new life was beginning to grow and made a decision. I am going back, she said, pregnant or not, dangerous or not. That is my wolf, my light, my birthright, and I will not let Dorian keep it. Elsbeth smiled, and for the first time Rhiannon saw pride in her grandmother's eyes. Then we begin preparation, the old woman said. But first you must tell the king. He will not let you go alone. Rhiannon thought of Theron, of the bond humming between them, of the way he had saved her, protected her, given her access to his wolf even though it cost him dearly. No, she said quietly, he will not. And she was not sure if that made her feel safer or more afraid. She told Theron that evening. He had come to her chambers as he did every night, now no longer pretending it was coincidence. They had fallen into a routine over the past weeks. He would arrive after sunset and they would sit by the fire. Sometimes they read, sometimes they talked. Sometimes they simply existed in companionable silence. Tonight Rhiannon could barely sit still. Theron noticed immediately. His silver eyes tracked her movements as she paced before the hearth, his expression unreadable. Something has happened, he said. Not a question, a statement. Rhiannon stopped pacing. She turned to face him, her hands clasped together to keep them from trembling. I am pregnant. The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water. For a long moment Theron did not move, did not breathe. His face showed nothing at all, that perfect icy mask he wore so well. Then the mask cracked. Joy flooded his features. Pure, unguarded, devastating joy. The kind of expression she had never expected to see on the face of the Winter King. He crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees before her. His hands reached for her stomach with something like reverence, hovering just above the fabric of her gown, as if afraid to touch. A child, he breathed. We are having a child. Rhiannon felt tears prick her eyes. She had not expected this, had not expected him to care so deeply so immediately. You are not angry, she whispered. Angry. He looked up at her, genuinely confused. Why would I be angry? Because this was not supposed to happen. Because you never wanted to risk the bond strengthening. Because I never wanted to love, he finished softly. His hands finally settled on her stomach, warm, despite his usual cold. But a child, Rhiannon. I have dreamed of having a family. I just never believed I could have one. Not with the curse, not with everything. Moisture gathered in his eyes. You have given me something I thought was impossible. Rhiannon sank to her knees in front of him, bringing them eye to eye. She took his face in her hands, feeling the sharp angles of his cheekbones, the barely contained emotion trembling beneath his skin. We are having a child, she confirmed. You and me, together. Theron pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. She felt his shoulders shake, felt moisture against her neck. The Alpha King was crying, silent tears that froze into tiny crystals before they could fall. They stayed like that for a long time, kneeling on the floor before the fire, wrapped in each other, marveling at the impossible life growing between them. Finally, Theron pulled back just enough to look at her. Whatever you need, he said fiercely. Whatever this child needs, I will provide it. I will protect you both with everything I have. Rhiannon took a breath. Then I need you to take me back to Dorian's territory. Theron went very still. Why bowing? She told him everything. About the book in the library, about Elsbeth being her grandmother, about her mother dying from light magic too strong to contain, about being the last of the luminary bloodline. She told him about Celestine's letter, about Isabeau trapped in a curse, about the wolf that was killing her cousin from the inside because stolen light could not survive in darkness. And she told him about the decision she had made. I am going back, she said. I am going to reclaim my wolf. I am going to save Celestine and Isabeau if I can. And I am going to face Dorian and demand answers for what he did to Marcus. Theron listened without interrupting. When she finished, his jaw was tight, his eyes hard. You are pregnant, he said. The journey alone could. I know the risks, Rhiannon cut him off. But without my wolf, this pregnancy may not survive anyway. If I do not reclaim my light, I may lose everything. The child, my life, all of it. She gripped his hands. I have to try, Theron. I have to fight for this. For us. For our family. He closed his eyes. She could see the war happening behind them. The desire to protect her, warring with the knowledge that she was right. You will not go alone, he said finally. If you insist on this madness, then I am coming with you, and so is Elsbeth, and a full guard. Dorian will see that as an invasion. I do not care what Dorian sees it as. Theron's voice was ice and iron. You are my wife, my mate, the mother of my child. Where you go, I go. That is not negotiable. Rhiannon felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Not love, perhaps. Not yet, but something close to it. Trust. Then we leave at first light, she said. Theron nodded, but before he could stand, she stopped him with a hand on his arm. Thank you, she said quietly, for not trying to lock me away from my own protection, for trusting that I know what I need to do. He looked at her for a long moment, searching her face with those winter-bright eyes. You are stronger than you know, Rhiannon, he said. Braver than you believe. I would be a fool to stand in your way. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle and reverent. But I will walk beside you, every step, no matter what comes. They left 3 days later, giving Theron time to arrange the guard and settle urgent kingdom business. The morning of their departure was gray and cold, the sky heavy with the promise of snow. Rhiannon stood in the courtyard wrapped in a fur-lined cloak, watching servants load supplies onto pack horses. Elsbeth appeared at her side, moving with the quiet grace of someone who had spent 72 years learning to read a room. Are you ready for this, child? The old woman asked. Rhiannon thought about the question. Was she ready to face Dorian again? To see Celestine dying from the wolf that should have been hers? To potentially watch her uncle sacrifice everything for a wife the world believed dead? No, she was not ready. But she was going anyway. I have to be, she said simply. Elsbeth nodded. Your mother would be proud of you. She had this same fire, this same determination to do what was right, even when it cost her everything. She died for it, Rhiannon said quietly. She died bringing you into the world, Elsbeth corrected. And if you had asked her in that final moment if it was worth it, she would have said yes without hesitation. That is what mothers do. We sacrifice, we endure, we burn so our children can shine. She took Rhiannon's hand. But you, my darling girl, you are going to do something your mother could not. What is that? You are going to survive. Theron emerged from the palace, then dressed in traveling leathers, his dark hair pulled back from his face. He moved with the dangerous grace of a predator, all controlled power and lethal precision. Behind him came 6 guards, all seasoned warriors, who Theron trusted with his life, and his wife's. We ride in 10 minutes, Theron announced. We should reach Dorian's territory in 3 days, if the weather holds. 3 days. Rhiannon pressed a hand to her stomach where the child grew in secret silence. 3 days to prepare herself for whatever came next. They mounted their horses as snow began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, coating the world in white. Rhiannon's mare was gentle, chosen specifically for a pregnant rider. Theron rode beside her close enough that their legs nearly touched. And as they passed through the palace gates, Rhiannon looked back one last time at the place that had become her sanctuary. She did not know if she would return whole, but she knew she would return. For her child, for her king, for herself. The Hollow Queen was going home to reclaim her light. The first day of travel passed in relative silence. They followed the main roads, which were still passable despite the snow. The landscape rolled by in shades of white and gray, bare trees, frozen streams, farmland sleeping beneath winter's blanket. Rhiannon felt every mile in her bones. The pregnancy was making her more tired than usual, and without her wolf, the cold seeped deeper than it should. But she did not complain, did not ask to slow down. She would not be the weak link in this journey. Theron seemed to sense her discomfort anyway. During their midday rest, he approached with a flask of hot tea and a thick blanket. Drink, he ordered, pressing the flask into her hands. And rest. We have time. I am fine, Rhiannon said. You are exhausted and trying to hide it. He wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. You do not have to prove your strength to me, Rhiannon. I already know you are strong, but strength also means knowing when to accept help. She took a sip of the tea. It was sweet and warming, spreading heat through her chest. The bond, she said quietly. You can feel how tired I am. Yes. He sat beside her on the fallen log she had claimed as a seat. I can feel the drain on your body, the way the child pulls at your energy. It worries me. Rhiannon looked at him, really looked, at the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes, the way his hand kept drifting toward her as if to reassure himself she was still there. You are afraid, she realized. Terrified, he admitted, of losing you, of losing the child, of making the wrong choice and having it cost me everything that matters. It was the most vulnerable she had ever seen him. The Ice King melting. We will be careful, Rhiannon promised. We will be smart, and we will face whatever comes together. Theron's hand found hers. Together, he echoed. They sat like that until Elsbeth announced it was time to move on. The second day brought them into rougher territory. The roads narrowed, winding through dense forest where the snow had drifted deep. They moved slower, the horses picking their way carefully through the white. That night they made camp in a clearing. The guards set up tents while Elsbeth prepared a simple meal over the fire. Rhiannon huddled close to the flames, trying to chase away the persistent chill. Theron draped his own cloak over her shoulders without a word. You will freeze, Rhiannon protested. I am always cold, he said with a slight smile. A little more will not hurt me. They ate dried meat and hard bread, washing it down with melted snow. It was not the feast Rhiannon had grown accustomed to in the palace, but it tasted better than anything she had eaten in Dorian's dungeons. Small mercies. As the fire burned low, Elsbeth began to tell stories. Old tales of the luminary of wolves who could heal with their touch and illuminate the darkest nights. Stories of Rhiannon's mother, who had laughed like summer rain and danced under full moons. Stories of a woman Rhiannon had never known but desperately wished she had. She would sing to you, Elsbeth said softly, her eyes distant with memory. Before you were born, she would place her hands on her belly and sing the old songs, the ones passed down through our bloodline. Songs of light and hope and eternal dawn. What happened to her? Rhiannon asked. At the end, Elsbeth was quiet for a long moment. The light burned too bright, she said finally. During the birth, her magic surged. She could not control it. It consumed her from the inside, turning her blood to liquid gold. She lived long enough to hold you once, to name you, and then she was gone. Tears tracked down the old woman's weathered cheeks. But she was smiling, even as the light took her, because she had given the world something precious. She had given us you. Rhiannon felt her own tears fall. For a mother she had never known. For a legacy she had not understood. For a magic that had cost so much. Theron's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close. She leaned into him, drawing comfort from his solid presence. You will not burn, he said quietly, just for her. I will not let that happen to you. Rhiannon wanted to believe him, but she knew some fires could not be stopped. On the third day, they reached Dorian's territory. The moment they crossed the border, Rhiannon felt it. A shift in the air, a heaviness that pressed down on her chest. This land carried bad memories, bad magic. The fortress loomed ahead, dark stone against a darker sky. Home, she thought bitterly, if it could even be called that. They were met at the gates by a nervous guard who clearly had not expected the Alpha King himself to arrive. Your Majesty, the man stammered, we were not informed of your visit. Lord Dorian is not prepared. I do not care what Dorian is prepared for, Theron said coldly. Tell him I am here, and tell him I want to see Celestine. The guard fled. They dismounted in the courtyard. Rhiannon's legs were unsteady after 3 days of riding. Elsbeth steadied her with a hand on her elbow. Breathe, child, the old woman murmured. We are here. The hard part begins now. Before Rhiannon could respond, a commotion erupted near the main entrance. People were shouting, running, and then she saw why. Celestine lay collapsed in the courtyard, her body convulsing. Her amber eyes, those eyes that should have been brown, were wide and unseeing. Golden light leaked from her mouth, her nose, her eyes, the wolf inside her trying desperately to escape. No! A voice rang out. Dorian emerged from the fortress at a run, dropping to his knees beside his daughter. Celestine, hold on. Please, just hold on. But Celestine was not conscious to hear him. The stolen wolf was killing her, and everyone could see it happening. Rhiannon moved without thinking. She crossed the courtyard in long strides, pushing past guards, and onlookers dropping to her knees on Celestine's other side. Up close, she could see how much her cousin had deteriorated. Skin stretched thin over bones, dark veins spiderwebbing across her neck and chest, eyes sunken and surrounded by bruises. This was not the vibrant young woman who had stood beside Dorian at the treaty ceremony. This was someone dying. Rhiannon, Dorian's voice was hoarse. Please, you have to help her. I am here, Rhiannon said quietly. I got the letter. I came. She placed her hand on Celestine's chest right over her heart, right over the place where the wolf that did not belong pulsed with frantic, desperate energy. And for the first time since the ritual, Rhiannon felt her. Her wolf, trapped, screaming, trying to come home. I am here, Rhiannon whispered again, this time to the wolf. I am here. I will bring you home. The golden light flickered, then receded slightly. Celestine's convulsions eased. Her breathing, which had been ragged and shallow, smoothed out. Dorian stared at Rhiannon with something like wonder. You calmed her, he said, just by being near. The wolf recognizes you. Of course she recognizes me. Rhiannon's voice was hard. She is mine. She has always been mine. And you stole her. Dorian flinched. Theron appeared at Rhiannon's, shining in his presence a wall of cold authority. We need to get Celestine inside, he said. And then, Lord Dorian, you and I are going to have a conversation. A long one. Dorian nodded mutely. They carried Celestine to her chambers, laid her on the bed. Elsbeth stayed with her, monitoring her breathing, her pulse, the dangerous flickers of light still trying to escape. And then Dorian led Rhiannon and Theron to the East Tower, to the truth he had been hiding for 5 years. The tower was isolated from the main fortress, connected only by a narrow stone bridge. Dorian unlocked the heavy door with trembling hands. No one comes here, he said quietly. No one but me. Inside, the air was thick with magic. Old magic. Dark magic. The kind that left a taste of copper and ash on the tongue. They climbed a spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever. Up and up until Rhiannon's legs burned and her breath came short. Finally, they reached the top, a single round room, windows on all sides but covered with heavy curtains that blocked out the light. And in the center, on a raised platform, a glass coffin. Inside it lay a woman. She was beautiful even in sleep. Dark hair spread across white silk. Skin pale but not quite lifeless. Chest rising and falling so slowly it was almost imperceptible. Lady Isabeau, Dorian's wife. The woman the world believed dead. 5 years ago, Dorian began, his voice hollow, I refused a political alliance with the Blackwater Pack. Their alpha wanted Celestine to marry his son. A cruel boy, a vicious boy. I said no, and in retaliation they cursed Isabeau. He moved to the coffin, placing his hand on the glass. A death curse, slow and relentless. She grew weaker every day, could not eat, could not wake. The healer said she had months at best. I tried everything, every healer, every witch, every remedy known to our kind. His voice cracked. Nothing worked, until I discovered the truth about the luminary bloodline. Light magic can break death curses, pure light untainted by darkness. And you, Rhiannon, you were the last one, the only one who could save her. He turned to face them, desperation etched into every line of his face. I thought if I transferred your wolf to Celestine, she could channel the light while keeping herself safe. I thought I could save my wife without killing my niece, but I was wrong. Tears streamed down his face. The magic rejected Celestine because it was stolen. The wolf has been trying to return to you from the moment the transfer completed. And now it is killing my daughter while my wife continues to fade. I destroyed both of them. I destroyed you, all of it, and I still have nothing. Rhiannon stared at him, at this man who had been like a father to her, who had raised her after her mother died, who had taught her to ride and read and fight, who had betrayed her in the worst possible way. And Marcus, she asked quietly. Dorian closed his eyes. Marcus discovered my plan. He found my research. He confronted me 2 days before the ritual, told me he would expose everything if I went through with it. He could not finish. You killed him, Rhiannon said. You set the fire. You murdered an innocent man to protect your secret. Yes. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Theron's power rolled through the room, crushing and absolute. You committed murder. You stole your niece's wolf. You framed her for a crime she did not commit. You left her to rot in a dungeon while you played the grieving lord. His voice was death itself. Give me one reason I should not execute you where you stand. I have none, Dorian said simply. I am guilty of all of it. I will accept whatever punishment you decree. He looked at Rhiannon. But before you pass judgment, I am begging you. Not as your alpha, Not as your uncle, as a man who has lost everything and stands to lose even more. Save them, if you can. Celestine and Isabeau are innocent in all of this. They do not deserve to die for my sins. Rhiannon moved to the glass coffin, looked down at Isabeau's sleeping face. If I try to reclaim my wolf and use its light to break this curse, she said slowly, it could kill me. The healers say my body is already struggling. Channeling that much magic, especially while pregnant. I know, Dorian whispered. I know what I am asking, and I have no right to ask it, but I am asking anyway. Rhiannon felt Theron's presence behind her, solid, protective, furious. Do not do this, he said quietly. You owe them nothing. Dorian destroyed you, nearly killed you. You do not have to sacrifice yourself for his mistakes. Rhiannon turned to face him. What kind of mother will I be to our child if I walk away from people who need help? What kind of queen, what kind of person? She took his hands. I know it is dangerous. I know the risks, but I have to try to. Not for Dorian, for Celestine who was forced into this, for Isabeau who did nothing wrong, for the wolf inside me who has been trapped and screaming for 6 months. She pressed his hand to her stomach. And for this child. So they grow up knowing their mother fought for what was right even when it cost her everything. Theron's jaw worked. She could see the war in his eyes. If you die, he said finally, his voice breaking, if I lose you doing this, you will not. She said it with more confidence than she felt. I am luminary. Light magic is my birthright. I will control it. I will survive it, and I will come back to you. She looked at Elsbeth, who had appeared in the doorway. Can it be done? Rhiannon asked her grandmother. Can I reclaim my wolf and use her light to save them both? Elsbeth moved into the room, her dark eyes assessing. Reclaiming your wolf is possible, she said slowly. Celestine's body is already trying to reject her. The transfer back should be smoother than the original theft. But she moved to Isabeau's coffin, studying the sleeping woman with a healer's eye. The death curse is strong, 5 years of accumulated darkness. To break it completely would require an enormous surge of light magic, more than you have channeled before, more than your mother could control. She looked at Rhiannon. You could reclaim your wolf and stabilize Celestine, or you could reclaim your wolf and save Isabeau. But attempting both in your current condition while pregnant child that is asking for your mother's fate, the light could consume you just as it consumed her. Silence fell over the tower room. Rhiannon looked at the glass coffin, at Dorian's desperate face, at Theron's anguished one, and then she made her choice. We do it in stages, she said. First we reclaim the wolf. I stabilize myself. Let the magic settle. Then we assess whether I have enough light left to attempt breaking Isabeau's curse. One step at a time. Carefully. Elsbeth nodded slowly. That might work, if the wolf returns willingly, if the magic cooperates, if your body can handle the strain. A lot of ifs, Theron said darkly. Life is full of ifs, Rhiannon replied. We navigate them as best we can. She turned to Dorian. Bring Celestine here. We do this tonight under the full moon. And Dorian, when this is over, you will face justice for what you have done. To Marcus, to me, to all of us. Do you understand? I understand, he said quietly, and I accept it. They prepared through the afternoon. Elsbeth gathered the materials needed for the transfer ritual. Ash and moonlight ink, silver cords, herbs that smelled of summer despite the winter cold. Ancient tools passed down through the luminary line kept safe even after Rhiannon's mother died. Dorian had Celestine carried to the tower room. She was conscious now, but barely. Her skin had taken on a translucent quality, the golden light beneath it visible like veins of precious ore. I am sorry, Celestine whispered when she saw Rhiannon. For all of it, I did not want this. I did not ask for it. I know, Rhiannon said gently. She took her cousin's hand, but we are going to fix it. Tonight. As the sun set, they arranged the tower room, cleared the space around Isabeau's coffin, drew symbols on the floor in white chalk, ancient luminary markings that would help channel and contain the magic. Theron refused to leave. He stood against the wall, arms crossed, his silver eyes tracking Rhiannon's every movement. If anything goes wrong, he said quietly, I am stopping it. I do not care about Isabeau. I do not care about Dorian's redemption. I care about you and our child. That is all. I know, Rhiannon said, and she did. It made her feel safer somehow, knowing that someone would fight for her survival above all else. The moon rose full and bright, its light streaming through the tower windows. It was time. Rhiannon and Celestine knelt facing each other in the center of the chalk circle. Elsbeth stood behind Rhiannon, her weathered hands steady despite her age. Dorian stood behind Celestine, his face a mask of barely controlled terror. And Theron stood just outside the circle, ready to intervene if needed. "Are you ready?" Elsbeth asked. Rhiannon and Celestine both nodded. "Then we begin." The words were ancient, older than kingdoms, older than alphas, words that tasted of starlight and stone. Rhiannon spoke them with Elsbeth, their voices blending. Celestine echoed them in counterpoint, her voice weak but determined. "By blood that calls to blood, by light that seeks its home, by the moon that watches and the earth that holds, I release what was taken. I reclaim what is mine, from this moment until the last." Power began to build in the space between them. Rhiannon felt it first as a tingling in her fingertips where they pressed against Celestine's, then as a warmth in her chest right over the void where her wolf should be. The emptiness began to pulse, not with pain this time, with recognition. Golden light started to seep from Celestine's skin, slowly at first, then faster, pouring out of her in streams of liquid sunshine. It flowed through their joined hands, seeking, searching, finding its way home. Rhiannon gasped as the light poured into her. It was like being struck by lightning, like drowning in summer, like every good thing she had ever felt concentrated into a single overwhelming moment. Her wolf slammed into her chest with the force of a thunderbolt. The sensation was indescribable. One moment she was empty, hollow, half a person. The next she was complete, whole, real. Her wolf unfurled inside her like a flower blooming after a long winter. She stretched, shook herself, and then threw her head back and howled with pure, unrestrained joy. "I missed you," the wolf said. "Oh, how I missed you." Rhiannon felt tears streaming down her face as she welcomed her wolf home. As she felt their bond snap back into place, strong and unbreakable, the way it was always meant to be. The light kept coming, more and more of it flooding into Rhiannon until she thought she might burst with it. This was her birthright, the luminary power that had killed her mother, the light magic that Dorian had stolen. It filled her completely, and then suddenly it stopped. Celestine collapsed forward, her eyes fluttering closed. The amber glow faded from them, leaving only her natural brown. She looked diminished somehow, smaller. But the awful translucence was gone. The dark veins had faded. She was hollow now like Rhiannon had been. But she was alive. "Celestine," Dorian caught his daughter before she hit the floor. "Celestine, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slowly. "It is gone," she whispered. "The wolf, the light, all of it. I can feel the emptiness." "I know," Dorian said, tears streaming down his face. "I know. I am so sorry. I am so, so sorry." Celestine managed a weak smile. "Do not be. It never belonged to me anyway. It was always hers." Rhiannon knelt there, shaking as her wolf settled into place. The bond was not quite as it had been before the theft. There were scars, places where the severing had damaged something fundamental. But it was there. It was real. She was whole again. Elsbeth placed a hand on her shoulder. "How do you feel, child?" Rhiannon took stock of herself, her body, her wolf, the light magic thrumming beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. "Strong," she said. And it was true. For the first time in 6 months, she felt strong. Her wolf sent her images. The baby, small and safe, nestled in her womb. The blood bond with Theron, now supplemented by her own wolf's presence. The light magic, vast and powerful, coiled inside her like a sleeping dragon. She had enough. Enough to try. Rhiannon stood on shaking legs and turned to face Isabeau's glass coffin. "No," Theron said, immediately reading her intention. "Rhiannon, you just reclaimed your wolf. You need to rest, to stabilize." "I have what I need," Rhiannon said quietly. "I can feel it. The light. It wants to be used. It wants to heal." She moved to the coffin, placing her hands on the glass above Isabeau's heart. "And I am going to save her. Not for Dorian, for me. Because mercy is a strength, not a weakness. Because I choose to be the kind of person who helps when they can, even when it is hard." She looked at Theron. "Because I want our child to know that their mother chose light over darkness. Every single time." Theron's jaw worked. Finally, he moved to stand behind her, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders. "Then I stand with you," he said. "But if you start to fade, if the light starts to consume you, I am pulling you out. I will not watch you burn the way your mother did." "Deal," Rhiannon said. She closed her eyes and reached for the light. It came willingly this time, eager to be used for its true purpose. Healing, restoration, breaking the darkness that had no place in the natural world. Rhiannon let it flow through her hands into Isabeau's still form. Golden light flooded the glass coffin so bright everyone had to look away. It seeped into Isabeau's skin, her blood, her bones. It sought out the death curse, the accumulated darkness of 5 years, and it attacked. Light versus shadow, life versus death, hope versus despair. Rhiannon felt the curse fighting back. It was strong, deeply rooted, fed by years of malice and hate. It did not want to let go. But Rhiannon was stronger. She poured more light into Isabeau, more and more until the glass coffin blazed like a star, until the entire tower room was bathed in golden radiance. And then with a sound like breaking chains, the curse shattered. The darkness evaporated. The death magic dissolved. And Isabeau drew a deep, shuddering breath. Her eyes opened. They were clear, aware, alive. "Dorian," she whispered, her voice hoarse from years of silence. "I am here." Dorian sobbed, reaching through the now opening glass coffin to take her hand. "I am here, my love. You are safe. You are awake. You are—" He could not finish, could only hold his wife's hand and weep. Rhiannon swayed on her feet. The light had taken more than she expected. She felt hollowed out again, but differently this time. Not empty, just depleted. Theron caught her before she could fall. "Enough," he said firmly. "No more magic, no more heroics. You are done for tonight." Rhiannon nodded weakly. She had done it, reclaimed her wolf, saved Celestine, broken Isabeau's curse. She had survived, and more than that, she had proven something to herself. That she was not just a victim of what had been done to her. She was a survivor, a fighter, a woman who could face her worst nightmares and emerge stronger. As Theron carried her from the tower, Rhiannon's last glimpse was of Isabeau and Dorian holding each other, Celestine leaning against her mother with tears of relief, and Elsbeth standing over them all with a small, proud smile. The light had won, for now. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Dorian would have to face justice. Celestine would have to learn to live without a wolf. Isabeau would have to understand what had been sacrificed in her name. But tonight, Rhiannon simply let herself rest in Theron's arms. Her wolf curled contentedly in her chest, her child safe in her womb. She had done enough. She was enough, and that was everything. The journey back to Valdoria took 5 days instead of 3. Rhiannon needed the slower pace. The magic she had channeled had depleted her more than she wanted to admit. Her wolf was back strong and vital, but her body was still learning how to work with it again after months of absence. And the pregnancy added its own complications. She tired easily, needed frequent rests, slept deeply each night, and woke still exhausted. But she was alive, whole, and that was everything. Theron watched her like a hawk. He refused to let her push herself, refused to let her pretend she was stronger than she felt. Every time she swayed in the saddle, he was there. Every time her breathing grew labored, he called for a halt. "I am fine," she protested on the second day when he insisted they stop for the 4th time. "You are recovering from channeling more magic than most wolves use in a lifetime," he said flatly. "You are pregnant. You just reclaimed a wolf your body had learned to live without. You are not fine. You are surviving. There is a difference." Rhiannon wanted to argue, but the truth was he was right. Behind them rode Elsbeth, ever watchful, and with them came 3 unexpected additions to their party: Dorian, Isabeau, and Celestine. It had been Theron's decision. After Isabeau woke and the initial reunion tears had dried, he had made his judgment clear in public. "Lord Dorian," he had said, his voice carrying through the fortress's great hall where he had assembled the pack. "You stand accused of murder, of theft of a wolf, of conspiracy against your own niece, of framing an innocent woman for crimes she did not commit. How do you plead?" Dorian had stood straight, shoulders back, accepting his fate. "Guilty," he said simply, "to all of it." The crowd had erupted in whispers. Isabeau, still weak but standing with Celestine's support, had closed her eyes in pain. "The penalty for murder among our kind is death," Theron continued. "Do you dispute this?" "I do not." However, Theron's silver gaze swept the assembled wolves. "The law also allows for alternative sentences in cases where the condemned shows genuine remorse and the victim's family advocates for mercy." He had looked at Rhiannon then. "Your Majesty, Rhiannon of Valdoria, last of the luminary line, you are the primary victim in these crimes. What say you, death or mercy?" Every eye had turned to her. Rhiannon had stood there feeling the weight of that choice. Dorian had destroyed her life, had murdered Marcus, had left her to rot in darkness. Death would be justice, but mercy was power. "Exile," she had said finally. 10 years of service to the crown, working the border territories where the need is greatest. Dorian will use his skills as an alpha to protect others instead of harming them. He will face his sins every day by working to atone for them. She had met Dorian's gaze. And when the 10 years are complete, if he has proven himself worthy, he may petition to return. Not as a lord, not as an alpha, but as a man who earned his redemption. The crowd had been stunned into silence. Theron had nodded. So it shall be. Dorian, you leave for the border at the next full moon. Until then, you will accompany us to Valdoria to settle your affairs and say your farewells. And so they traveled together, the victims and the perpetrator, the hollow cousin and the uncle who had stolen everything, the cursed king and the light queen, an unlikely company bound by complicated threads of family betrayal and forgiveness. On the third night, Isabeau sought out Rhiannon by the campfire. "May I sit?" the older woman asked. Rhiannon gestured to the space beside her. Isabeau settled with a grace that spoke of nobility, though her hands still trembled slightly from her long imprisonment. "I want to thank you," Isabeau said quietly, "for saving my life, for showing mercy to my husband when he deserved none." "I did not do it for him," Rhiannon said honestly. "I did it for me, because I wanted to prove that I could choose light over darkness, mercy over vengeance." Isabeau nodded slowly. "Still, you gave me back my life, and for that I am eternally grateful." She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "This belonged to your mother. Dorian kept it after she died, but it should have gone to you. I want you to have it now." Rhiannon took the pouch with trembling fingers. Inside was a pendant, a wolf carved from amber, suspended on a delicate gold chain. The craftsmanship was exquisite, and when she held it up to the firelight, the amber seemed to glow from within. "She wore it always," Isabeau said. "She told me once that it was a luminary tradition. Each woman passes it to her daughter, and it holds a piece of their light, a connection through the generations." Rhiannon clasped the pendant around her neck. The moment it settled against her skin, she felt it. A warmth, a presence, as if her mother was there watching over her. "Thank you," she whispered. That night she dreamed of a woman with dark hair and golden eyes singing songs of light and hope. And when she woke, her hand was on the pendant and tears streaked her face. But they were not tears of grief. They were tears of connection, of legacy, of belonging to something larger than herself. They reached Valdoria on the 5th day as snow began to fall in earnest. The palace rose before them, stone and glass and ancient magic, and Rhiannon felt something in her chest ease. This was home now. This place that had given her sanctuary when she had nothing. The court was waiting. Word had spread of the queen's journey, of her reclaimed wolf, of her mercy toward the man who had destroyed her. The courtyard was packed with nobles and servants, all craning to catch a glimpse. Rhiannon dismounted carefully, Theron's hand steadying her. Her wolf stirred inside her, stretching, assessing. Strong again, whole again, different than before perhaps, scarred by what had been done, but healed. They could feel the eyes on them, the judgment, the speculation. And then Rhiannon did something she had not done since arriving at this palace. She let her wolf show. Golden light flickered in her eyes. Not overwhelming, not bright enough to hurt, just enough to prove that she was no longer hollow. The crowd gasped. "The queen has her wolf," someone whispered. "The light has returned." Rhiannon held her head high and walked into the palace, Theron at her side, leaving rumors and wonder in her wake. The Hollow Queen was hollow no more. The next 2 months passed in a blur of activity. Dorian prepared for his exile, settling his affairs, making arrangements for his lands to be managed in his absence. Isabeau and Celestine stayed at the palace guests of the crown while they recovered their strength, and Rhiannon began to learn what it meant to be queen with a wolf. The difference was staggering. Energy she had not felt in months. Strength that did not fade after a few hours. The ability to heal small cuts and bruises overnight. Connection to the moon cycles. Dreams that felt like prophecy. Her pregnancy progressed well. At 4 months, she began to show. A small but definite curve to her belly that made Theron's expression soften every time he saw it. He was different now, too. Less guarded. The walls he had built so carefully were crumbling bit by bit. He touched her more often. Sought her company not out of duty but desire. Smiled at her across crowded rooms. And at night, when they sat by the fire in her chambers, he would rest his hand on her growing belly and talk to their child. "Your mother is the strongest person I have ever known," he would murmur. She walked through fire and came out carrying light. She faced the darkness and chose mercy. "You are lucky to have her. We both are." Rhiannon would listen, warmth blooming in her chest, wondering when exactly she had fallen so completely for this cold, cursed king. At 5 months, the baby began to kick. Rhiannon was sitting in council when it happened. A flutter low in her belly, then a definite thump. She gasped, her hand flying to her stomach. Theron was at her side in an instant. What is wrong? Is it the baby? Do we need healers? Feel, she said, grabbing his hand and pressing it to her belly. They waited. One breath, two, three, then thump. Wonder flooded Theron's face. His hand spread across her stomach, and when the baby kicked it again, he laughed. Actually laughed, a sound of pure joy that echoed through the council chamber. She kicked, he said, emotion thick in his voice. Our daughter kicked. You think it is a girl? Rhiannon asked. I know it is. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. I can feel her through the bond, strong and bright and perfect, just like her mother. At 6 months, Dorian left for the border. The whole court gathered to witness his departure. He stood in the courtyard in simple traveling clothes, no longer a lord, just a man accepting his punishment. Isabeau held his hands, tears streaming down her face. 10 years, she said. I will wait for you. I will be here when you return. I do not deserve you, Dorian said roughly. No, but you will earn me. Every day for the next 10 years, you will work to become the man I believed you were. Celestine hugged her father tight. She was still adjusting to life without a wolf moving through the world as a hollow. But she was alive, and she was learning that identity was more than the beast inside. Finally, Dorian approached Rhiannon. Your Majesty, he said, bowing low, I have no words that can undo what I did to you. No apology sufficient for the harm I caused. But I swear on my life I will spend the next 10 years trying to earn a fraction of the mercy you showed me. Rhiannon looked at the man who had destroyed her, who had given her life and then taken it away, who had taught her to ride and then taught her what betrayal felt like. Be worthy of her, she said, gesturing to Isabeau. Be worthy of your daughter. Be worthy of Marcus's memory by protecting others the way you failed to protect him. Do that, and when you return, I will welcome you not as an exile, but as family. Emotion filled Dorian's eyes. He nodded once, then mounted his horse and rode away. Rhiannon watched him go and felt something release in her chest. Not forgiveness, perhaps. Not yet. But the beginning of it. The possibility. And that was enough. At 7 months pregnant, Rhiannon woke one morning to find Theron watching her sleep. You are staring, she said, her voice rough with sleep. I am memorizing, he replied quietly. Every detail, just in case. She reached for his hand. Just in case what? But she knew. She had felt it too through the bond. The curse quiet for months, stirring again. Waiting, like a predator watching its prey. They had been so careful, so deliberate in maintaining distance. The bond was strong, yes, but they had not completed it. Had not said the words that would trigger the curse fully. Had not admitted what they both knew to be true. I am afraid, Theron said, and it was the first time she had heard him admit it so plainly. Of losing you, of losing our daughter, of loving so much, it kills me. Rhiannon sat up, taking his face in her hands. I am afraid too, she said, every day, but I am more afraid of living half a life, of holding back, of our daughter growing up in a house where her parents were too scared to love each other. The curse is a shadow from the past. Her voice was firm. And I am luminary. Light breaks shadows thereon. We just have to be brave enough to let it. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. I do not know how to be brave about this. Then let me be brave enough for both of us. She kissed him, soft at first, then deeper, pouring everything she felt into it. All the love she had been afraid to name, all the hope she had been afraid to claim. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Theron rested his forehead against hers. I love you, he whispered. I have loved you since I found you in that dungeon. Since you looked at me with eyes that should have been dead, but still held fire. I love you, Rhiannon. I am terrified of it, but I love you. Rhiannon felt her own tears fall. I love you too, she said. I love your coldness and your warmth. I love your fear and your courage. I love that you saved me and let me save you. I love... The words caught in her throat, because the moment she said them, the moment the confession was complete, she felt it. Ice, not just cold, true ice spreading across Theron's chest like cracks in glass. Shock and pain filled his eyes. His hand flew to his heart, where frost was already crystallizing over his sternum. No, he gasped. Not yet, I thought we had more time. Theron, Rhiannon grabbed him as he swayed. No, please, we just said... But the curse did not care about timing. Did not care about pleas or prayers or hope. It had been waiting, and now it had what it needed. True love fully acknowledged. The ice spread faster, up his neck, across his shoulders, down his arms. His skin turned translucent pale as winter frost. His veins pulsed with cold blue light. Rhiannon could see his heart through his chest. could see the ice forming around it, encasing it, freezing it beat by agonizing beat. "Healers," she screamed. "Someone get the healers. Now." People came running. Guards, servants, Elsbeth moving faster than a woman her age should be able to. They carried Theron to his chambers, laid him on the bed, but there was nothing they could do. The curse was old magic, dark magic, stronger than any remedy they possessed. "How long?" Rhiannon demanded, clutching Theron's freezing hand. The head healer, a woman who had served 3 generations of kings, just shook her head. "Days, perhaps hours. The curse feeds on the bond, on the love between mates. Every moment you spend connected to him strengthens it." "Then I will break the bond," Rhiannon said immediately. "You cannot." Elsbeth's voice was gentle but firm. "The blood bond is permanent, and the mate bond has already begun, triggered by the confession. You are tied to him now, completely." "Then what do I do?" Rhiannon's voice broke. "How do I save him?" Elsbeth took her hand. "I do not know if you can, child." Theron lasted 3 days. 3 agonizing days where the ice spread slowly but inexorably, where he drifted in and out of consciousness, where every breath came harder than the last. Rhiannon refused to leave his side. She held his freezing hand, talked to him when he was awake, begged him to fight when he slipped away. Her wolf paced inside her, desperate and helpless. The light magic that had saved Isabeau, that had broken a death curse, seemed useless against this. This was not a curse laid by witches. This was written into Theron's very blood, woven through generations, deeper than healing could reach. On the 2nd day, Celestine came to sit with her. The younger woman was quiet for a long time, just keeping vigil. Then she said, "I felt it, you know, when the wolf was inside me, trying to return to you. She showed me things, memories, knowledge." Rhiannon looked at her cousin. "What kind of knowledge?" "About curses, about how they work." Celestine's voice was hesitant. "The wolf wanted me to tell you, but I did not understand until now. A curse is a shadow, yes, but it is also a knot, a tangle of old magic and old pain. To break it, you do not blast it with light. You have to unravel it. Find where it starts and pull the thread." "I do not know where it starts," Rhiannon said helplessly. "In blood," Elsbeth said from the doorway. "The curse started with the first king, with broken promises and betrayed love. That is where you have to go, Rhiannon, into the bloodline itself. How about through the bond, you are connected to Theron so deeply now that his blood is your blood. His past is your past. If you go deep enough, if you trace the connection back far enough, you might find the source." Elsbeth moved closer. "But child, it will be dangerous. You are 7 months pregnant. Your body is already strained. Going that deep into someone else's bloodline, into centuries of accumulated magic, you might not come back." Rhiannon looked at Theron, at his frozen face, at the ice creeping toward his heart. She thought of their daughter growing inside her. She thought of the life they were supposed to have together, the family they were supposed to build, and she made her choice. "Tell me what to do." The ritual required blood, moonlight, and a courage Rhiannon was not sure she possessed. She sat beside Theron's frozen form, her hand pressed over his ice-encased heart. Elsbeth stood behind her, hands on her shoulders, grounding her. "Close your eyes," the old woman instructed. "Follow the bond, not forward into him, but backward, through his father, his grandfather, all the way to the beginning, to the first king who was cursed." Rhiannon closed her eyes and dove into the bond. It was like falling into frozen water. She gasped as Theron's memories crashed over her. Recent ones first. Their confession, the pregnancy reveal, the blood bond ritual. Further back, finding her in the dungeon, the loneliness of ruling alone, his mother's death. Further, she pushed deeper past Theron's lifetime into his father's. She felt the previous king's love for his wife, felt the curse activate, felt him freeze and die while still young. Further still, generation after generation, each king loving, each king dying, the curse activating again and again like clockwork. And then she reached the source, the first king, Alaric. She saw him young and handsome and arrogant, saw him court a woman with dark hair and darker eyes, a witch, powerful and beautiful, and completely in love with him. Morwenna, she gave him everything, her power, her knowledge, her heart, and he promised her the world, marriage, a crown, forever. But when the time came when his advisors told him a witch queen would weaken, the bloodline would bring scandal, Alaric broke his promise. He married a nobleman's daughter instead, gave her the crown that should have been Morwenna's, and he sent the witch away with empty apologies and hollow gold. Morwenna's heart shattered, and in her grief and rage she cursed him. "You promised me love eternal." Rhiannon heard her say the words echoing across centuries. "So love eternal you shall have, and it will kill you. Every king of your line who finds true love will die within a year. You will watch them fall generation after generation because you taught them that love is death. And you will die knowing that your own blood carries the seed of its destruction." Then Morwenna walked into the sea and never came back. Alaric lived, but hollow, haunted. And when his son found love, the curse activated for the first time. Rhiannon felt the curse's structure now, saw how it was built. Layer upon layer of grief and betrayal and broken promises all twisted together into a knot that tightened with each generation. But she also saw something else. A thread, golden and thin, almost invisible. A way out that Morwenna had woven in at the last moment. A mercy even in her rage. "Pure light," Rhiannon whispered, understanding. "Freely given. Not to break the curse by force, but to fulfill the promise that was broken. To give the love that was denied." She opened her eyes. "I know what to do," she said. "Child," Elsbeth began, "I have to give him light. All of it, everything I have. Not to blast the curse away, but to complete it. To give Alaric's bloodline the love they were promised. The love they should have had all along. That much magic will—" "I know." Rhiannon's hand moved to her belly. "But if I do not try, he dies anyway. And our daughter grows up without a father. I have to try." She did not wait for permission. She placed both hands on Theron's frozen chest and called to her light. It came roaring out of her like a flood. Golden, brilliant, burning with all the love she felt for this man, all the hope for their future, all the dreams of the family they would build. She poured it into him. Through the bond, through the curse, all the way back to the beginning. And she spoke to Morwenna's ghost across the centuries. "I give him love," she said. "Freely, completely, the love you were denied, the love this bloodline has been starving for. Take it, use it, let it fulfill what was broken, let it complete what was left unfinished. Let love heal what betrayal destroyed." The light burned brighter. Rhiannon felt it consuming her the way it had consumed her mother, felt it burning through her blood, her bones, her very essence. But she did not stop. She gave everything. And somewhere in the space between life and death, between past and present, she felt Morwenna's presence. Felt the witch's rage soften, felt her grief acknowledged, felt her accept the offering. The curse began to unravel. Strand by strand, the knot loosened. The ice on Theron's chest cracked. The darkness that had plagued his bloodline for 300 years began to dissolve like smoke in sunlight. And Rhiannon burned. She felt herself fading, felt the light taking too much. Just like her mother. Just like every luminary who had channeled more power than their body could hold. She was dying, but Theron was saved. And that was enough. Just as the darkness closed in, just as she felt herself slipping away, something inside her kicked. Hard. Her daughter. Fighting, refusing to let her mother go. And with that kick came a surge of new light. Not Rhiannon's light, the baby's. Pure, innocent, unstained by fear or doubt or darkness. The light of new life poured into Rhiannon, sustaining her, pulling her back from the edge. Mother and daughter working together, completing the curse breaking as a team. The ice shattered, every piece of it, from Theron's chest to the curse woven through his blood to the shadow that had haunted 300 years of kings. It all broke. And Theron gasped, his eyes flying open, warm air rushing into lungs that had been frozen solid. He was alive, curse-free, whole. Rhiannon collapsed into his arms, sobbing, laughing, her hands pressed to her belly, where their daughter still kicked strong and sure. "You saved me," Theron whispered, holding her tight. "You both saved me." "We are a team," Rhiannon managed through her tears. "All three of us, forever." But the magic had taken its toll. An hour later, the contractions started. "It is too early," the head healer said, her face grave. "She is only 7 months along. The baby is not ready." "Make her ready, Hai," Theron demanded, pacing beside the bed where Rhiannon lay breathing through pain. "Your Majesty, I cannot simply—" She just broke a 300-year-old curse. She channeled enough light magic to burn down this entire palace. Figure it out. The healers worked frantically. Herbs to slow the labor. Potions to strengthen the baby. Magic to stabilize Rhiannon's body, which had been pushed far beyond its limits. But the contractions kept coming. "The magic triggered the birth," Elsbeth said quietly. "The surge of power, the strain on her body, it told her system the pregnancy was complete. We can slow it, but we cannot stop it." Theron looked at Rhiannon, at her pale face and trembling body, and felt fear like he had never known. "Will she survive this?" he asked. "I do not know," Elsbeth said honestly. "She is strong, but she has already given so much. And a premature birth, especially after what she just endured." She did not need to finish. The labor lasted 18 hours. 18 hours of pain and fear, and Rhiannon's screams echoing through the royal chambers. 18 hours of Theron, holding her hand, pressing cold cloths to her forehead, whispering that she could do this. She was strong. She was everything. 18 hours of the baby refusing to come. "She is stuck," the head healer said finally, worried tight in her voice. "The baby is not descending. If this continues much longer." "No," Rhiannon gasped. "No, she is not stuck. She is waiting." "Waiting for what?" Theron demanded. Rhiannon's eyes met his, and he saw understanding there. Through the bond, through the connection that was now unbreakable and uncursed, she showed him. The baby could feel the fear, could sense that something was wrong, and she was holding back, afraid to be born into danger. "She needs to know it is safe," Rhiannon whispered. "She needs to know we are ready for her." Theron leaned close, pressing his hand to Rhiannon's belly. "Little one," he said softly, "this is your father. I know you are scared. I know the world seems big and uncertain. But I promise you we are ready. Your mother and I, we fought through curses and darkness and impossible odds to be here for you. We are not afraid anymore. And you do not need to be either." He felt the baby move under his hand. "Come meet us," he continued. "Come meet your mother, who is the bravest person in all the kingdoms. Come meet me, your father, who loves you more than life itself. Come meet your grandmother, Elsbeth, who has been waiting 72 years for this moment. We are all here. We are all ready. Come join our family, little light. We have been waiting for you." Rhiannon added her voice to his. "Come, baby girl," she whispered. "Come see the world your father and I built for you. A world without curses. A world full of light. Come shine with us." The baby kicked once, and then finally she came. The birth was fast after that. 3 more contractions, one final push, and then a cry. Strong and loud and furious at being made to wait so long. The head healer caught the baby, her face splitting into a smile. "A girl," she announced. "Small but perfect. Healthy. Strong." She placed the baby on Rhiannon's chest. Theron looked down at his daughter for the first time and felt something profound shift inside him. She was tiny, barely bigger than his hands. Dark hair like his damp and matted against her skull. And when she opened her eyes, golden, bright, brilliant gold. The eyes of the luminary, the eyes of light wolves. "Hello, Aurora," Rhiannon whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We have been waiting for you." Aurora blinked up at her Schwarzens, and as she did, golden light pulsed from her small body. Not overwhelming, not dangerous, just a gentle glow that filled the room with warmth. The light of new life, the light that had saved her mother, the light that had broken a curse 300 years in the making. Theron touched his daughter's tiny hand with one finger, and she gripped it with its surprising strength. "She is perfect," he said, emotion thick in his voice. "You are both perfect." Rhiannon looked up at him, exhausted but radiant. "We did it," she said. "We really did it." "You did it," Theron corrected. "You saved me. You saved our family. You broke the curse that has haunted my bloodline for centuries. Rhiannon, you are—" He could not find words big enough, so he kissed her instead, soft and reverent and full of every emotion he had spent his life learning to feel. And as he did, Aurora's light pulsed brighter, as if celebrating her parents' love. The curse was broken. The Hollow Queen had found her wolf. The Winter King had learned to love without dying. And their daughter, born of magic and sacrifice and impossible hope, would grow up in a world free from the shadows of the past. It was everything. And it was only the beginning. 5 years later, spring came to Valdoria in a riot of color. Flowers bloomed in the gardens. Trees budded with new leaves. The snow that had blanketed the kingdom for months finally melted, revealing green grass and fresh earth. And in those gardens, a small girl with dark hair and golden eyes played under the watchful gaze of her parents. Aurora was 5 now, tall for her age and impossibly bright in every sense of the word. Her light magic manifested in small, delightful ways. Flowers bloomed when she laughed. Small animals followed her like she was made of sunshine. When she concentrated very hard, she could make her hands glow just enough to read under her blankets at night. Theron watched her chase butterflies, warmth in his expression that would have shocked anyone who remembered the cold, closed-off king he used to be. Rhiannon sat beside him on a bench, their second child, a boy of 2 with his father's silver eyes toddling nearby. Do you ever think about it? Rhiannon asked quietly. About what we went through to get here. Theron took her hand. Every day, every moment I see our children, every time I wake up beside you and remember I am alive to do it, every time I feel warmth instead of cold. He turned to face her. Do you regret it? The pain, the fear, everything you sacrificed? Rhiannon thought about the question, about the dungeons and the theft of her wolf, about the long road to reclaiming what was stolen, about the curse breaking that had nearly killed her, about all of it. Not for a second, she said. Every scar I carry led me here, to you, to them, to this life. How could I regret anything that gave me everything? Aurora ran over then, breathless and glowing. Mama, Papa, look what I made. She held out her small hands. Cupped between them was a ball of pure golden light, swirling and pulsing like a tiny sun. I made light, she said proudly. Just like you, Mama. Grandmother Elsbeth says I am getting very good. You are amazing, little love, Rhiannon said, pulling her daughter close. But remember, light is a gift. We use it to help people, to heal, to bring hope. I know, Aurora said seriously. Then she grinned. Can I use it to make my brother's vegetables disappear? He does not like them. Theron laughed, the sound rich and warm and completely free of the coldness that had once defined him. Nice try, he said, but your brother needs to eat his vegetables like everyone else. Aurora pouted, but the light in her hands flickered and faded, absorbed back into her small body. As the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the garden, Elsbeth approached. She was 77 now, moving slower, but still sharp as ever. A letter came for you, she said, handing Rhiannon a sealed envelope. From the border. Rhiannon broke the seal and read quickly. Then she smiled. It is from Dorian, she told Theron. He says his service is going well. He has helped rebuild 3 villages and negotiate peace between 2 feuding packs. He asks if when his 10 years are complete, there might be a place for him here. Not as a lord, just as family. What do you think? Theron asked. Rhiannon looked at her children, at Aurora, who was teaching her little brother to make a daisy chain, at the life they had built from ashes and darkness and impossible choices. I think everyone deserves a chance to earn their redemption, she said. If he serves well for the next 5 years, if he proves himself worthy of Isabeau and Celestine's faith in him, then yes, there will be a place for him here. She folded the letter carefully. We all started somewhere dark. The difference is in how we choose to find the light. As the stars began to emerge, the family made their way back to the palace. Aurora rode on her father's shoulders, chattering about the butterflies she had seen. The boy toddled between his parents, holding both their hands. And Rhiannon felt the pendant at her throat, her mother's pendant warm against her skin. 3 generations of luminary women. Her mother, who had burned bright and fast. Her grandmother, Elsbeth, who had survived and served and kept the bloodline alive. And Rhiannon herself, who had been broken and hollow and had found a way to shine anyway. Now there was a 4th generation. Aurora and whatever daughters she might one day have. A line of light wolves stretching into a future no longer haunted by curses or shadows. That night, after the children were asleep, Rhiannon and Theron stood on their balcony looking out over the kingdom. Do you ever miss it? Rhiannon asked. Being the Winter King. The coldness, the distance. Theron pulled her close, his warmth, actual warmth, now seeping into her. I miss nothing about the man I was before you, he said. That king was surviving. This king is living. There is a difference. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You taught me that love does not make us weak. It makes us brave. Strong enough to break curses. Strong enough to choose mercy over vengeance. Strong enough to build something beautiful from ruins. Rhiannon leaned into him, feeling safe and whole and more herself than she had ever been. We built it together, she corrected. You and me, the Hollow Queen and the Cursed King. We saved each other. We saved each other, he agreed. And as the moon rose over Valdoria, full and bright and free from ancient curses, Rhiannon felt her wolf stir contentedly in her chest. Home, the wolf said. This is home. Yes, Rhiannon thought back. This is home. Not a place, not a palace or a kingdom or a crown. Home was here, in this moment, with this man, with these children, with a family built from broken pieces and bound together by light. She had been stolen from, betrayed, hollowed out and left to die in darkness. But she had survived. She had reclaimed what was taken. She had chosen mercy when vengeance would have been easier. She had broken curses that predated nations. She had given birth to light that would outlast her lifetime. She had become exactly who she was always meant to be. Not a victim, not a hollow shell, Not a woman defined by what had been done to her. A queen, a mother, a light bearer, a curse breaker. Rhiannon, last of the luminary line, first of a new legacy. And as she stood on that balcony wrapped in her husband's arms, her children sleeping safely nearby, her grandmother keeping watch, her wolf whole and healed inside her chest, she was not just surviving anymore. She was shining.